The night she asked me to pretend to be her boyfriend, I laughed because I thought she was joking. 3 weeks later, I was standing beside her at a hospital bed, holding her trembling hand while her mother whispered, "Please don't leave her alone." That was the moment I realized our little act had become something neither of us knew how to stop. If stories about second chances, unexpected love, and the kindness of ordinary people touch your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes the beginning of the biggest change in someone's life. Her name was Emma. I had known her for almost 2 years because we worked in the same small publishing company. She was the quiet one who always arrived early, carried too many books in her arms, and smiled even when she looked exhausted. I was almost the opposite. I joked too much, stayed late because I procrastinated, and believed that if you could make someone laugh, you could survive almost anything. But I had noticed something about Emma that nobody else seemed to see. Whenever someone asked about her family, her smile disappeared for half a second before returning. One Friday evening, everyone had gone home except us. Emma was sitting at her desk staring at her phone. She looked as though she had just received terrible news. When I asked if she was okay, she told me her mother had been invited to a family wedding and had insisted that Emma bring her boyfriend. The problem was that Emma didn't have one. Her relatives had spent years treating her single life like a personal failure, constantly comparing her to cousins who were married with children. She was tired of being questioned, judged, and pitted. Trying to lighten the mood, I leaned against her desk and said, "I'll pretend to be your boyfriend." She looked at me for several seconds before answering, completely seriously, "We'll need practice. No one will buy it." I laughed so hard that I nearly dropped my coffee. But Emma didn't laugh. She simply opened her calendar and started planning. The wedding was in 3 weeks. Apparently, we had to learn everything about each other: favorite foods, childhood memories, embarrassing habits, how we supposedly met, and even how we held hands. She said fake couples who didn't know how to look at each other were obvious. At first, it was ridiculous. We practiced walking together, sharing jokes, remembering imaginary dates, and pretending we had been together for 8 months. But slowly, something unexpected happened. I began learning the real Emma behind the quiet smile. I discovered that she loved old movies, hated thunderstorms, secretly cried during romantic books, and had once dreamed of becoming an artist. She learned that I had stopped drawing years ago after my father died because he had been the only person who encouraged me. Our pretend relationship became strangely comfortable. We started having coffee together every morning. We walked home together after work. Sometimes we talked for hours without realizing how late it had become. Yet neither of us mentioned the obvious change happening between us. Then came the wedding. Emma's family welcomed us with suspicious smiles. Her aunt immediately started asking questions about our future, and I answered every question confidently. When Emma's hand slipped into mine beneath the table, I felt something inside me shift. I realized I wasn't pretending anymore. Later that evening, Emma disappeared from the reception. I found her outside behind the venue, sitting alone on a bench beneath a tree. She was crying quietly. Her mother had collapsed. The ambulance had taken her to the hospital, and Emma blamed herself for spending so much time worrying about what everyone thought instead of noticing how exhausted her mother had become. She kept saying she should have known. I sat beside her without trying to fix anything. I simply held her hand. For the next several days, I stayed near her. I brought coffee, drove her to the hospital, handled small things she forgot to do, and sat beside her during long nights when sleep refused to come. Nobody asked me to pretend anymore. Nobody cared whether we were really together. We were simply two people trying to survive something painful. One morning, Emma's mother finally woke up. She looked at me, then at Emma, and smiled weakly. She told Emma that she had never seen her daughter look so peaceful before. Then she squeezed my hand and said she hoped I would stay. Those words terrified me because I knew exactly what they meant. A week later, Emma and I sat in the same cafe where our ridiculous relationship training had begun. She looked at me and said the wedding was over, the family questions were finished, and there was no reason for us to keep pretending. I nodded. Then she asked me something that broke my heart. She asked whether I wanted to stop. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to protect myself from the possibility of losing her. Instead, I told her the truth. Somewhere between practicing how to hold her hand and actually holding it when she was afraid, I had fallen in love with her. Emma looked down at our hands. Then she smiled through tears and whispered that she had fallen in love first. Months passed. Her mother recovered slowly, and Emma returned to her dream of painting. I started drawing again too. We rented a tiny apartment filled with books, unfinished paintings, mismatched cups, and the kind of laughter neither of us had expected to find. One evening, Emma found the old calendar from the day she had asked me to pretend to be her boyfriend. She looked at the first page and laughed. "You know what the funniest part is?" she said. "What?" "You were terrible at pretending." I smiled and pulled her closer. She rested her head against my shoulder and said that maybe that was why it worked. Because neither of us had been pretending for very long. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need a reminder that love can sometimes arrive disguised as a joke, a favor, or a simple act of kindness. Before the ending, tell me in the comments, have you ever done something as a joke that unexpectedly changed your life? Years later, whenever someone asked Emma how we met, she would smile and tell them that I once offered to pretend to be her boyfriend. Then she would look at me and add, unfortunately for him, he was much better at becoming my real boyfriend. And every time she said it, I remembered that night in the office when I thought I was only making her laugh. I never knew that one careless joke would lead me to the person who taught me that sometimes the greatest second chance in life begins when you stop pretending and finally have the courage to be honest about what your heart wants.